Hello and welcome to the Young Film Academy podcast, the essential podcast for teenagers looking to find their way into the creative industries. And the second bit, or the last bit of what I just said, has never been more relevant, because whilst we have explored film, we've explored TV, the intention of this podcast, despite being called the Young Film Academy podcast, is really to delve into all creative industries. And we really have an opportunity to do that today, which we haven't before. I'm Dan Allen, I'm a filmmaker director, and I'm joined with writer, co-founder of Young Film Academy, James Walker. And who are we going to be talking to, James? Because this is very exciting.
This is very, very exciting, because we're very lucky to have with us today someone who I've known for a long time, and he works in a space that I know nothing about. So I can't wait to talk to Alex, because Alex has got basically, I think, a dream job by a lot of young people's standards, by anyone's standards. Alex is the music affairs director at Sony PlayStation. And he's going to tell us a little bit more exactly what that is. But we're going to have a chat about music and how his work is to sort of fit music into video games.
Including The Last of Us, Gran Turismo, all the big titles that you can think of that are essentially PlayStation exclusive. So in any game that came out only on PlayStation, he was involved in. Not even the big ones, every game. He is the music department, right?
He is one of the big people in this field. And he's a BAFTA award winner for some of his work. And yeah, it's absolutely brilliant to have him with us. And I know he's passionate about passing on what he knows to the next generation. So it's absolutely brilliant to have you on the podcast, Alex.
Thank you so much, James. Good to see you.
Great to have you on, man. So first of all, Alex, let's set the scene. What is it? What's your official title? And what is it, I suppose, that you do day to day? Tell us what you do.
So my official title at PlayStation is Music Affairs Director. I look after a lot of the music in our games. So PlayStation is both a platform for a bunch of other publishers to publish games on, but we're a large publisher of games ourselves. There's a substantial amount of original score that goes into those games, but also songs as well. I help source composers. I source all the original songs. And should we wait for this to be done?
Alex has a roofer in at the moment, so we can explain to the audience.
Sorry.
There is a roofer in right now, so we're going to get some banging. We're going to have to live with the banging.
I apologize to you guys.
No, it's good. It's so good that
I'll
we
be
can
honest,
put up with
when
it.
you said you had a roofer, I thought roofer was just like an endearing nickname term for like your kid or something, and they were playing the drums upstairs.
No, there's like 6 guys on the roof right now, so I apologize in advance. So yeah, I source composers and artists to write original songs for our games, as well as basically anywhere that music touches the PlayStation brand. So advertisements, advertorials, teasers about specific games, about the console, and the relative services that PlayStation provides. So the roles evolved over the years. I've been at PlayStation now for, I think, 17 years, 16
Wow.
years, a long time.
Does that include the sounds of PlayStation itself? Because obviously there's the whole startup chime, the menu theme and stuff like that. But do you source composers for that? How does that work?
That's a good note. So there is a separation here between sound design, which is sort of everything from Foley, sound effects to ADR and dialogue, which is a separate division of my within my group. It's separate from my responsibilities. So there's a massive team of folks who handle all that stuff. Specifically with regard to the startup sounds, those are handled, interestingly, for the most part, out of Japan by our sort of corporate department. I think because that's where it all started, and startup sounds are so important. And so there's been 5 of them, right?
Yeah.
Total. For us, leastways. So there's a lot of care and thought that goes into that. My team actually did help source and compose the logo, sound, and sort of broadcast design of the PlayStation Studios logo, which you would have seen on the TV show The Last of Us and the film Uncharted and the upcoming Gran Turismo film and a whole bunch of stuff that's coming out into theaters and TV shortly. So,
well, I mean, this is amazing. I mean, it's so exciting for us to have you on because, I mean, I know you're the big man there, basically. So is there anyone more senior within PlayStation in charge of kind of putting music on to the content than you?
Yeah, there is. I have a boss. His name's Chuck Dowd. He's a wonderful guy. He's been there for 25 years at this point.
Wow.
And he sort of, the way that all great sort of managers do, he sort of clears the brush and clears the road for us to be able to do the jobs we all do here. And I'm thankful for him and for his time here as well. Because as a boss, he's always sort of trusted me to just do the best work I can, and I can't ask for more than that.
Oh, this is so cool. I mean, I know we're going to have loads of listeners who are going to think, right, they're going to think, I love computer games and I love music. This is a dream job. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people thinking. And so I suppose let's stick with a bit more kind of what you do at the moment, then we'll work backwards to kind of how you got there. But so maybe just talk us through maybe a kind of the life of a game in terms of a particular game you might want to, I know that you've worked on a couple of really big names, I think Gran Turismo, Last of Us, and maybe talk about kind of, I suppose, the life of a game, because coming from the movie industry, I think, certainly I feel I've got a sense of a movie's life, but I have absolutely no idea of a video games and at what point music comes in and then step by step and those kind of really lovely kind of how does it work stuff.
Absolutely. So, over the time that I've been at PlayStation, what the life of a game is and how it works has changed. I mean, I started in gaming while the PlayStation 2 was still the sort of console du jour at PlayStation, which had some online capability, like a LAN port, but not even really, because Ethernet wasn't really a big thing at that point. So why that's relevant is that the game as shipped on a disc was the game. That was it. Yeah. There wasn't no take backs. If there was a bug in the game and the game was broken, that was it as it shipped. Also, you were subject to this specific memory on that disc, and that was basically like a CD. It wasn't a Blu-ray. It didn't have the size and space capability. So the size of the games and transitively the size of the scores and the number of music cues and sounds you were able to include on the disc, you were always fighting for space, right?
Wow.
So finding artful ways, just like and this is well before my vocational time, my job time, but just much like the themes you heard in Super Mario Brothers or Donkey Kong or Pac-Man, that were those sort of single note, maybe polynote, chiptune material, those were made out of necessity because of the amount of space you were allowed to have within the scope of the actual physical item you were shipping. So as I've been there for the length of time I have, the game dev cycles has increased, like the amount of time it takes to make a game. Now it's usually in an ideal world, from the beginning of an ideation to the green light of a project to the final development of a project. In an ideal world, it's like 3.5 years. Really, it's more like 4 or 5 for the sort of AAA big games we're making. From our involvement, like my team's involvement, we try to get in with the creative directors, the people who are coming up with the ideas around games as early as possible, to sort of come up with, what does this sound like? What's the sound palette? Like, what's the feeling we're trying to be evocative of? Is it grand? Is it tight and close and intimate? I mean, an example of grand is a game we put out a couple years ago, is called God of War Ragnarok. It's a sequel to our 2018 game God of War, and that's big and mythic and giant, huge choirs and 60-piece orchestras. And then you have projects like The Last of Us, which are about a very tight and close and intimate, more hand-to-hand experience that you're having with the characters, and how that has to be reflective in the type of music that's composed. It's still evocative and emotional and heavy, but just in a different way. So I feel like our team plays a very strong part in defining what these experiences are, and how you can sort of lose yourself in them, if that makes any sense. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's so good. And so let's break this down. So, right, we're early stages of a new game. You or your team meet the kind of people who are coming up with the idea of the game, and they give you some big stuff. We want it mythic. We want it big. Like the Ragnarok game. So, but the game doesn't exist yet, right? So you can't actually play anything yet. So what do you guys do with that information?
Well, I think there's like in that instance, you would look at like in most pitches, and it's something everybody tries to avoid, but you say it's this meets this, or it's this cross with this, or there's always that idea that there is some reference point previous in terms of tone and setting. So if somebody looks at you and says it's 300 meets the road, right? It's like they give you some kind of feeling of what you have the grandiose ferocity of it with the tender, intimate relationship between the two, the sort of father and son in that piece. So from that, you extrapolate out what do we think that sounds like, and part of the job is sort of starting off with that big block of stone and hammering away at it until you come up with something that feels right, and we're really in, like any music supervisor or composer or person in the place of working with the director, we're really in service to the director and the project's creative forces, right? To figure out how to lay temp, how to give people playlists of existing material, how to talk to composers about what we're looking to accomplish, and it, the three note, for example, bum 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 bum, like the main theme from God of War, that took years. It took like over a year of getting compositions from Beer McCreary, the game's composer, that were like, there's something interesting there. There's something interesting there, and it was like a refrain that was in the middle of one of the cues. The bum bum bum. That thing, that 3-note mnemonic, that thing that was there, we were able to pull it out and say, that's it. That's the thing,
And are you having...
But that was 6 months.
Sorry, I was going to say, are you having that conversation directly with the composer? Or are you also talking with the game's designer as well? Like, is it a 3-way conversation? How does that side of things?
It's a lot. I mean, part of what we bring to the table as a music team is the language. Is understanding if the creative director says, I need it to be more brutish, or I need it to be something that is more recognizable, and that doesn't mean anything musically. So finding ways to translate that to a composer and also work with them, like our team is pretty substantial in the volume of editors and orchestrators and implementers and people that are involved in our process, that being able to pull cues apart and highlight elements of things we think might work and to focus on is part of the magic that we bring to it. So the first stage in that process is kind of going out and finding, I suppose, other material, and then almost going back to the key creative team and saying, do you mean like this? And when they get that nod that you're on the right lines, it's then it's, as you say, it's chipping away at the block of marble, almost to find out what is not, as much as what is. Yeah. Absolutely. And that extends to songs as well. If you're looking at artists to write pieces of music around a game, I mean, I had Hosier write a song for God of War, and finding the right artist for something that exists out of time, that's not a real place, that involves, different mythologies. I mean, finding a current artist to write something that feels timeless, or out of time in a weird way is a challenging thing to do, just as much as, hiring somebody to write a pop song for Gran Turismo or for for Spider-Man, for any of our other games. So finding ways to create timeless music to support narratives that hopefully are going to exist for for as long as any of our films do. So
yeah, so good. And how do you make the choice, I suppose? At what stage do you go, this is a new commission thing, this is a new song we need, and then at some stage going, this is that track that already exists but is great and we can license it and bring it in?
Well, over my time at PlayStation, and I worked in the music business before I was in the gaming space. The sort of credibility, for lack of a better term, of gaming has skyrocketed.
Totally.
I think when I'm 44 years old, so when I was starting in this space, everybody was looking at it and saying, games are kid things. This is just a kid thing. There's there's an upward ceiling to what this is in terms of its sort of critical viability or how valuable it will be to culture in any kind of way. In the past 15 years, that's changed. That's gone 180. It's completely gone in the other direction. So I only bring that up to say, because of the length of our dev cycles and because people are generally paying $60 for this offering, if you're buying a game, you're spending $60 for it, and it's been in development for a long time. You want things that are germane to and native to that experience. The end user does. Now, there are always moments like if I need Aerosmith or if I need Let Me Ride by Dr. Dre, that's going to be in there because it fits a moment, right? And it's important. But in a lot of our pivotal moments, what we're trying to do is create unique experiences that create culture, not mimic it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So the amount of new material proportionally is a lot bigger now on the games than it was historically.
Absolutely.
And has the obviously with video games coming into the mainstream and not being seen as this kiddish venture, has that changed the tone of the production process? Is it seen as significantly more important? Are the conversations more serious in a way? Although I imagine it's still nonetheless incredibly fun, even if that was the case.
Yeah, I think there's this. Yes, it's changed the tone of the experience because proportionally, like you're saying, things have gotten more credible and also more expensive to make. So when people are saying when I started, and this is again getting into finance, when I started, the PlayStation was 10% of Sony's overall profit share, and I think we're now up to 32%, 33% of all of Sony's profit.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I think with that comes a lot of hey.
Yeah. Get this right, guys.
yes, please. So I think there's a little more importance to what the work is, but I think the people who've been making it have always found it to be important. But I think there's this term of art in our business it's MEP, which is minimum, and it's something that's part of a deliverable process, which is a minimum enjoyable product, meaning I have to interact with this. I don't have to unlike film and TV. I'm not consuming it. I'm not watching it. It's not a passive experience. I have to interact with this. So is it enjoyable to me to have this interaction, right? And there's a real drive, and always has been, as far as I'm concerned, to make things fun or to make things engaging in a way that give you that dopamine hit that keeps you going. And
do you get that? And I suppose on that journey, because I'm sure there's a whole feedback process. Actually, it'd be quite interesting to know. Do they do kind of the equivalent of test screenings or test gamings where people then feed back and then sort of, I suppose there must be a tailoring process and changes are made. But during that, do you sometimes get people going, music sucked or music was amazing? Is the music a part of that? And you guys then have to riff with that. Tell us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, I mean, there's green lights. There's green lights. Once it's not like a film where once somebody greenlights a picture, you go and shoot for three months or 6 weeks if you're 3 months if you're lucky, but 6 weeks more realistic, right? So, and then you have the footage, and then you have to cut together, and then there are cuts, and people make a decision of whether they're going to shelve it or keep going. There's a moment where we have to make the thing. Right.
Yeah.
But with gaming, because you're building more modularly, you're building a small gameplay loop as a green light, let's call it. You're building like a small segment of a game to show off like what are the mechanics? What's the procedural mechanic of the gameplay? What are the button presses or strokes? Is this a stealth game? Is this a driving game? If it's a driving game, is it a technical driving game? Is it a crash and burn driving game? If it's a quest game, what am I being asked to do? And so you build these ever growing concentric circles of what the gameplay will be. And at every stage of that, before every next circle gets approved, there's a green light.
Wow.
In that cycle, depending on where you're at in the cycle, music is either involved or not. Early, there's a lot of temp. Midway, we start to get some composed or licensed music or bespoke songs in there. And there's always comments from the powers that be, people who oversee development for PlayStation as a whole, people who run the relative developers that we work with, who are constantly looking at the project and saying, this part isn't working, this part's working great, focus more on that, etc. So,
how many video games make it out of the first loop? Like, is there loads in development that just don't make it past that first opportunity?
I wouldn't say loads, but I would say it's a 50%
interest.
And
has I think it was like a Call of Duty game back in the 2000s that I think had Hans Zimmer did the composing on, which to me was like a big moment because it was certainly the first video game that I was aware of that you had someone from the film world that was a big name and known, that was not just hired to do it, but seemingly, very excited to do it as well. With that evolution, has the kinds of people and the kinds of composers that you have access to changed a lot? Do you get a lot more interest from people like wanting to come on board that world? How has that sort of changed?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started again in the PlayStation 2 days, there was like a cabal of video game composers, like people who specifically and exclusively worked in the video game space.
Yeah,
and not the sort of 8-bit or 16-bit more Japanesey composers. I'm saying Japanesey, but they're Japanese composers who composed for Echo the Dolphin and games of that era.
Quality game.
Great game, by the way.
Yeah,
and great score. And as the medium has grown, and frankly, as the budgets have grown, like when you can justify cost and showcase the reasons why these scores support the narrative experience, the number of people who are interested in doing it expand. I will say, and this might be a point where we can dive into this, there's a substantial difference between composing for film and television and composing for gaming. And, film and TV is linear scoring and gaming is nonlinear scoring and adaptive scoring.
Is that like creating loops and stuff?
I want to know. I'm super interested by that. Yeah.
Did you want to?
Well, I was just thinking that a lot of young people, because what we find at Young Film Academy is that actually quite a lot of people start with an interest in music, and this isn't. They start off. It's like if you start off with an interest in acting and then you end up doing something else. But music's often quite a young people when they first start expressing themselves in some form of art. Music's often quite one of their first touchstones. So I think there's a lot of people who have such an interest in that and will then want to kind of broaden themselves artistically. And so there may be a lot of young people listening to this who are going, I would like to try composing music for a video game that I hadn't thought before. So this technicality of looping scoring versus, what do you call it? How does the
linear?
Tell us.
Yeah. So typically on a film or on a television show, people are scoring to picture, and they're close to picture lock when they're delivered a specific sequence, and the composer will look at that sequence, figure out where music is needed, where space is needed, how to leave space for the dialogue that's there, and to score things in a relative arc that tie a film or an episode together. But they're dealing with picture. Traditionally in gaming, because the cycle is so long, and because the style of the gameplay style of the player, meaning the person who's bought the game and is sitting down and loading into their PlayStation or burning, whatever it is, varies from player to player. The amount of time it takes to complete a specific set of tasks or sequences varies based on who you are and how you play. So a composer for a game oftentimes would deliver a suite of music or several suites of music up to about 2.5 to 3 hours of music for a game that could be 60 to 70 hours long. And our team takes those suites of music, breaks it up, creates innumerable derivative cues out of those assets, and then programs them and implements them to specific areas of the game based on decision-based play by the consumer.
Okay,
That's
this
a
is
very wordy way of saying.
No, it's totally. I'm as someone who's not an expert in this field, let me break that down. What I think you're saying there, which is, so obviously, when you're composing music to a particular picture, you're choosing that particular moment. Let's say it's a horror movie, you want that big boom because it's the scare moment or whatever it is that you're doing. Whereas obviously, when you're playing a computer game, you don't know what the player's gonna be encountering at any moment because it's their decision. So your music can't be based around specific narrative moments,
or it
has
can,
to be,
but it doesn't know when it's going to happen, because you guys might know exactly in this level, for example, the monster will jump out, but you don't know how long it's going to take the player to reach the moment when the monster jumps out, and then it's triggered by that. Is that sort of the mechanic?
Yes, that's part. That both of what you said is yes. And there's obviously specific moments in games called cutscenes, which I'm sure the people who are listening to this podcast are well aware of, that are linear, non-playable, sort of expository, meaning sort of explaining story beats or background or task-based things that you're supposed to be doing, that are like little mini movies within the games. And those things are scored linearly, like you would score a TV show or a film, because they're picture locked, for lack of a better term. But as a composer, James, to answer your question, a lot of times you're dealing with more sort of thematic moments or character moments or ideas of specific struggles or quests that are more sort of ideas than things that they're seeing. I mean, the composer maybe gets to see some storyboard or some character art or something that gives them a sense of who these people are in space. And games have scripts just like films do. The scripts are formatted a little bit more differently. So there's the ability for the composer to know the overall story of what they're scoring, but they're not scoring specific sequences. And creatively, there's as much of a dance with us, with the composer, as there is in any other area that a composer is working, because there's a certain amount of trust they have to have in us. They're delivering a suite of music that, as it stands, will never be heard the way they've delivered it in.
Interesting. So they're not delivering sections being like, here's one loop, here's another thing, here's a section. Interesting.
No, they're delivering fully fleshed out multi-track fully fleshed out multi-track compositions. Multi-tracks meaning like every instrument or instrument set has its own track. So violins.
So you could go in and take bits out violas, if you wanted to.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, horns, vocal, whatever it is, right? And so what we'll do is create derivative assets from those large form suites that they're delivering to create smaller cues, derivative cues, if you will, that can operate in ways under gameplay depending on who's playing it. That's what allows 3 hours of music to become 60 hours of music.
That's it. And so the game you mentioned earlier, where there was there was 3 notes that ended up being the thing you guys really focused on. I mean, is there sometimes a composer delivers a load of music with this tiny element that they didn't think was a big deal within the grand scheme of it? You guys hone in on that. You're like, I love that. And then you use that across loads of stuff. So when the composer plays the game, they're like, oh my God, it's all full of like bar 79. I mean, they've gone big on bar 79.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in that instance, that was something that we fed back to bear the composer on specifically and explicitly, to say like we're the protagonist of the game his name is Kratos, so we were looking for Kratos' theme, and that was that 3-note bum 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 bum.
So they were pretty aware it was going to go everywhere.
We were like, hey, next round, that has to be the centerpiece of the composition. How does that work? And then how do we sort of build everything around that and allow for there to be support there. So like I said, there's a huge amount of trust and transparency between us and a composer and the game's director, because what they're delivering it has to be malleable and has to be pulled apart. As by the nature of what it is.
Yeah, totally.
It's also from a compositional perspective, a lot of composers think, so I can do all that. It's so much work.
Yeah.
It's so much work. So
how long is the composer working on the project? Because obviously, if the game's going to take up to 5 years, I assume the composer isn't going to be working on it for 5 years because they might have movies which are on more of like a year or two cycles.
Right. Well, you're bringing up a good point. So our work is much more milestone based. It's much less like, we've done our edit, we've got to picture lock, we're before mix, you have like a month to score the whole film.
Yeah.
Like it's not, we don't, because of the nature of what we do and how it has to live and dance with the adaptivity that's programmed into the game. The term of the work is much longer, but the milestones are much farther apart. So somebody will deliver a suite of music, and 3 to 6 months later, they'll deliver another 2 suites of music, right? So it allows that composer to obviously take on other projects in the interim.
Gotcha.
And sort of dance with us and come back to the material as it goes. So
they're not just sitting at home being like, God damn it, when will they do the next area of the game and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, if they are, I hear about it. So,
yeah, they wouldn't tell you, Alex. They wouldn't tell you.
There's so much. Are they working off a script as well? So obviously, you mentioned the scripts are different because there's different options and stuff. Is that what they get? Do they ever get like an early preview of the game to feel it? I suppose some of them might be gamers, some of them might not be.
Listen, if there was an early preview of the game, our business would be a lot faster. It's just the fact of it is there isn't an early preview of the game. The game exists as the game gets built, right? So
yeah.
But there is a script. So this is a good point to do some clarity, which I'm sure that the folks listening to this podcast are much more aware of than any of us. But in narrative gaming, which are games like where you have story and expository things about characters who evolve throughout the course of the gameplay, right? As opposed to like the game like Gran Turismo, which is like you get in, you're driving, and it's a time trial based. There's not a lot of narrative, right? Yeah. No character evolution. But in narrative based gaming, there's what's called the golden path, and the golden path is the sort of prescribed arc that you're supposed to take this character on through the course of the gameplay. As the technology has evolved, and as the technology has evolved, and as game design has evolved, there's a lot of branching off that narrative. Like there's a lot of side quests and tasks, and then there's sort of sandbox type things like Grand Theft Auto, where you can accomplish the golden path. In other words, like complete the cycle that the character is meant to go through. But then you can go back and just mess around in the space as much as you feel like. Where there'd be a script is for that golden path. So, Kratos' arc through various different challenges
it's just like
Norse
in a movie, you're trying to chart that hero's journey. I mean, whatever it might be, it's the same stuff, just slightly different format. So actually, let's delve into that, because I think that's completely fascinating. Is that the way in which we are seeing video games and movies kind of they're becoming closer and closer all the time. And if we could just, because I loved it so much, so I want to hear about it actually from the inside. But The Last of Us, which was originally a game, and that was a PlayStation game, and then moved on. Was it a PlayStation game? All right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then went on to become the series on Netflix, which is absolutely fantastic, and I hugely enjoyed it. So I was not familiar with the game, came to the series, had that slightly kind of old person. It came from a game. Is this going to be for me? And I was blown away by it. I thought it was a beautiful piece of work. So I suppose, can you give us a sense of your work both on that and also how those two have interrelated?
Yeah, so I worked with Naughty Dog for years. Who are the developer of The Last of Us, and Neil is the game and the show's producer and the game's director. And the hubris that the film and TV space prescribe onto games has always been like, oh, it's a game, it's not a big deal. We're going to give it gravitas. Well, this game was one of the first games that I've ever worked on that had a real deep and viable emotional core that wasn't metaphorical. It was right there in front of you. It was the relationship between these two characters and what was happening. And it had gone through various different permutations of development for a long time, and it took a long time for the right partner to come in. The right partner to come in to say, "You already have. It's all here. It doesn't need to be more than this. This is what it is." We had worked with Gustavo Santaolalla, who's the games composer and also one of the show's composers, who had famously scored Brokeback Mountain. That film, Brokeback Mountain, which was great.
Beautiful.
And again, a beautiful film about a very intimate relationship between two people.
Yeah.
And with Tilu, obviously different kind of relationship, but it was an intimate relationship between two people, two injured people, right?
For those who haven't seen it, it's about a sort of an older man in a sort of post-apocalyptic world who has to, for reasons that have become clear, take a young girl to a place for a specific reason, and it's their journey. How much of the music actually got in from the game into the TV show?
Most of it.
Oh, wow.
Most of it.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I mean, the benefit that HBO and Craig had in working on this title, and again, getting back to the work that my team does and has done, is coming up with things that are sort of iconic moments, that are iconic sound idents for the experience. You can show a lightsaber without John Williams' music, but how much more does the lightsaber impact you when you hear John Williams' music? And similarly, I honestly feel the same way about both Tilu and God of War, and a number of other scores, but it's inexorably tied. So the fact that we had recorded all this material, the fact that it was all available, and from a temp perspective, especially when you're cutting episodic pieces together to show the network and to show Naughty Dog, who were the owners of the IP, how things were working, it helped bind the performances and the feel of what Craig was creating to the source material.
Yeah. So cool.
A fair amount of it, yeah.
And I suppose, the answer to this is probably many things, but what is it that you love about doing this? You've stayed in the job a long time. You obviously, it seems like from what you're saying, love the work you do. Tell us what is it that you most enjoy?
I think I came from the record business which at the time was a really tough place. It was the beginning of file sharing and and Napster. So I graduated college in 2001. And then I started working immediately as a second or third assistant, basically like a paid intern at a record label, and then worked my way up to be an A&R guy and whatever it was. But there was such a separation of labor in terms of what you were able to work on. If you were a pop guy, you were a pop guy. If you were a rap or hip hop guy, you were a rap guy, and you just stayed in your lane and you did your thing. And that was it. The streams didn't cross, and you didn't do that. Coupled with the fact that you had a medium changing, it wasn't a very pleasant place to cut your teeth, looking at a sort of an old way of doing business dying and trying to figure out do I want to invest my youth capital in this space, right? And what's been intriguing to me about PlayStation,
that's a great phrase. Do you invest your youth capital? So for our listeners, that's a great. What do you invest your youth capital in?
That's a real thing. I assume that the folks listening to this are going to university or in high school or the equivalent of high school. It's a real thing
of where to invest the time of your life. We're on a spinning ball of rock. We've only got a certain amount of time. What are you going to do?
Yeah,
and
not only that, but the insight that, especially if you're looking to work in a creative space, whether it's film, music, television, video games, whatever. The insight and zeitgeist understanding that people between the ages of, let's say, like 15 and 23 have is the stuff that people our age, James, yours and mine from them. You as a young person are, for better or worse, getting strip mined for your zeitgeist understanding and knowledge. And how you want to share that or capitalize on that information, given that it's sort of shaping culture, as it were, is an important thing to guard and to understand how to utilize. It's an asset. So be mindful of it.
So I was going to ask, is your team, first of all, I had a couple of questions on a team, just how big a team are working on this stuff, numbers of people?
PlayStation Music is about 40 people worldwide. And it spans from people like myself in this sort of more creative direction role, and business affairs area, which is stuff I deal with as well, to people who are just doing who are doing editorial and implementation work, meaning taking the assets as delivered, editing them down, coupling them with middleware like WWise or Scream or any number of other programs that are utilized to actually get those pieces of music into the gameplay.
So interesting. And roughly
Sorry,
just age of those young people? I mean, or the team, is it kind of young,
right
skewed?
Out of college. Everybody, I mean, our team is from people just graduating college to 70.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a good spread. But imagine
absolutely.
There's a bias downwards, right? I mean, you've got more younger people.
I think in terms of more of the people that we're hiring, there are younger in terms of the space. But again, knowledge and understanding of how to orchestrate and how to manage musical feedback and to deal with clients, that takes time and experience and knowledge. It's not just something you step into. So that's older folks are really valuable in that space too. So,
and how your team, you work remotely now? Is that correct for the most part?
I do work remotely. I used to work out of the Santa Monica studio, which is where God of War is developed. But I interface with developers all over the world, from Japan to Canada to Europe. So I deal with our European teams early in the morning, and then I work on our U.S. teams throughout the day, and then our Japanese teams start about 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm in Los Angeles. And then I'll interface with them until about 8 or 9 o'clock. So it just allows me the latitude to partition the day into ways that get things accomplishable, if that makes sense.
And are those teams assigned to specific games, or do they each cover a different aspect of the musical curation of that game?
Well, the clients they're all different video game developers, so people are making individual projects. Within the music team, we have staff members who are assigned to specific projects.
Gotcha.
So some people work on baseball, and some people work on Spider-Man, and some people work on Wolverine, and some people work on take your pick. There's a ton of different stuff. So,
and I want to look forward before we're going to go back. We're going to time travel shortly, but let's look forward a little bit. Like, what's your view? This is someone who's worked in this space for 17 years. You've seen it develop. You've seen it kind of become, just commercially huge, right? Which has been one of the big things. I think, I can't remember what the biggest game was bigger than the biggest movie. I can't remember what that moment was, but it was...
Was it Call of Duty?
Well, it was probably Grand Theft Auto, I would imagine. Grand Theft Auto made, I think it was $1 billion in a day. So.
And where's the next one? They won't make another one, or they won't release one. I'm sure they're working on it. Oh, I'm sure.
They're making it.
Just takes time.
Well, I think when you have something that moves culture as much as that does, you want it to be perfect.
Yeah. 100%.
You want it to not only be perfect, but it's a game. Grand Theft Auto 5 has been in the market and is still a market leader. Almost 6 or 7 years after it came out.
Yeah, and they introduced the online thing, didn't they? Which bolstered it even
GTA
further.
Online, but that's still part of GTA 5, and it's running off the same engine. It's running off the same engine. So when you factor like how many films are in the marketplace for 5 years that people give a crap about, like they've earned the right by batting 1,000 in terms of releasing just monstrous game after game after game to take their time and to do it right, and also to James's point, to future-proof their whatever 6 is going to be what it is for a while.
Yeah.
So you have to build a broad enough base, like the bottom of the pyramid has to be big enough to support all the crap they're going to put on top.
And
so
where do you see? Because I don't know. Are you familiar with a movie called Lawnmower Man? Was made back in the day. It was in the 90s. It's a movie that really.
I'm not. I'm sorry.
Okay, it totally landed with me.
I'm excited to find out what Lawnmower Man is.
I'm going to say it was definitely Lawnmower something. I'm pretty sure it's Lawnmower Man. We can look it up. Anyway, in that there's this guy and he puts on gloves, touchy gloves, sort of sci-fi sensory gloves. So everything he thinks he's touching, it feels like he's touching it, and he puts on what now looks like a totally VR headset. And he kind of stands on this Orbi thing, and more or less he can completely immerse himself in whatever the world is and I can't remember if it's a game or whether he's time traveling or something. But I remember thinking, if you can get to that, are cinemas going to be almost like golf driving ranges where you kind of book a booth? Do you know what I mean? You book a booth and you go and you have just this total experience, or do you do that in your living room, or is it always going to be completely separate? Or movie? Where do you see this going?
I think Apple is betting on it being in your living room, right?
Yeah.
PlayStation, we're relatively deep in this space. I mean, we've released this just recently. In the past year, we released our second VR headset, PlayStation VR 2. The trick with any of this stuff is allowing for an immersive enough experience. What nobody, I think, has really figured out, and we've gotten eons better, and I'm exposing myself as somebody who has trouble with specific types of motion gameplay. Like the PlayStation VR 1, I could keep on for like 4 minutes and then I'd want to puke. Like I just couldn't do it. Yeah. And then it's more to do with whatever my eye sensitivity is than the project itself. But I knew other people who had similar experiences. With our second one, it's a lot better. I could spend 20 minutes in it before I want to puke. Yeah. But the key with a lot of these things is frame rate and mixed depth. In other words, there's a balance between the number of frames, FPS that you're getting in each eye, and the auditory mix that you're getting that's giving you depth of field through your headset. That keep your balance and equilibrium.
You need a full team of surgeons working on a computer game.
Yeah, it's everybody's racing. Every major multinational corporation is racing for the same things. Apple's reaching for it. Microsoft's reaching for it. We're reaching for it. Everybody's trying to figure this out, right? Because as soon as they can say, just don't go outside.
It'll be Ready Player One.
Inside, sit inside. Exactly. Sit inside on this thing. Exactly. So
you'll be responsible for the end of the world, basically.
I've made peace with that. So
it's definitely a more noble angle, I think, from PlayStation's model, though, which is if you give people really good experiences and keep them coming back to buy new experiences to get to enjoy with your headset on. Whereas I'm scared of the Facebook future, which is stay inside, put your headset on so we can serve you adverts, which is not quite as nice or exciting, I think.
I think they're all looking to do that.
Yeah, you reckon?
I wish I could say we were above the fray of that.
Yeah.
But I think being actually, I'm just going to leave that there. I think that, especially when it comes to music and these kind of experiences, finding ways to use so much of what VR or AR or visor-based experiences are about immersion, that especially in narrative offerings, music is almost used diegetically. Like it's used in a way that's meant to establish a sense of place or a sense of where you are in space. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. So are you suggesting that as we move to VR, you think that music's going to become, video games will become less like movies and more like a simulated experience in which maybe music's going to play a different role or a smaller role? Is that?
I think a different kind of role, especially when you're talking about establishing a person or a player in space.
Interesting.
And it depends on how realistic the experience is. You know, years ago, we made a game, a really, really beautiful game called Journey, which if you haven't played it, Dan or James or the folks listening to this podcast, I think it's still available on the PlayStation Store, and it might. I can't speak to whether it's available on Apple Arcade or not, but I cannot recommend it more strongly in terms of a game that puts you in a sense of place and gives you a sense of wonder and joy. But I pointed that as an experience where music can act as like a surrounding experience.
Yeah.
But so much of what I think all of the people developing AR or VR immersive projects are trying to do is to ground you in a specific place rather than keep you feeling like, oh, this is a game.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how music works in that space is entirely relative to what the project is. So in Journey, it's this sort of big, ethereal, floaty, like you're in that kind of experience.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. Whereas you know a Telu or a experience like that, you need to be able to use music and space to understand your safety and where you sit within the world that means to do you harm.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. And I suppose if looking forward, you know, that may well be where we go in this space. But let's take a trip backwards now to Alex, young Alex, teenage Alex, because I think, you know, there'll be a lot of listeners listening. They're going, "Oh my God!" I mean, that's what I want to do. I want to be early in on a Gran Turismo or a Last of Us or a Thor Ragnarok. I want to work in all these amazing cultural properties that I, as a consumer, love. They may have an interest in music. They may have an interest in storytelling. So give us a sense of kind of what you are up to in your teenage years that, I mean, may have informed where you are now in any particular way. And maybe it didn't. Maybe you were doing nothing that's relevant, but that's equally as important. So give us a sense. What was kind of Alex like as a teenager?
I was in a bunch of bands. I played music. I played music all the way through college. You know, I realized at a very distinct point that I was either going to be, I think I was like 14 and I had gone to the Berklee School of Music for a semester, which is a university to like just study music. And all the people there, all they wanted to do was music. That was it. Like they'd sleep in the practice rooms. They'd lock themselves in their rooms. They'd play, they'd jam, There was no like, hey, let's go see a movie. I would say, let's go see a movie. And they were like, you're out of your mind. You know? And that was a very specific set of people, right? But at that moment I was like, oh, I don't have this single-minded, you know, 6 hours of practice in a practice room by myself, dedication to this craft. I love it, but it's not my whole life. So, you know, I played sports and worked on cars and did stuff like that. But you know, music was a through line for me. And then, you know, in university, my folks looked at me and said, this is the time to study interesting things to become an interesting person. Don't look at this as like a trade school experience. Unless you are 100% sure of what you want to do and how you want to do it, which it doesn't seem like you are, learn interesting things and become an interesting person. At the time I was everybody in my family is in the film business, and I had voiced some interest in potentially going to film school, and both my parents who were both in the film business just said to me, like, becoming an interesting person, you're not going to make interesting movies going to film school.
Yeah.
Go become an interesting person.
Yeah, go live. Have something to tell stories about.
Interesting person.
I say this to students as well, that, you know, studying film's great, but if they're tossing up between studying film and doing something else that they're also really passionate about, like I do suggest following that route, seeing where that takes that interest, only so much as not to abandon film, but so that you might be able to offer film a slightly more unique perspective. And I think NFTS knows this as well. Like they did a whole scholarship program for students that had science degrees, which I thought was really interesting.
Great.
Just sort of grounding you in that way, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I was just sampling a bit of everything, and like I said, I played music in a bunch of bands. It was always kind of a through line for me as a love of.
That's so cool. And how did you then how did you make that transition then? So kind of talk us through. You went to university. What did you study? What did you study there? And how did you end up in this world, basically?
Yeah, I went to university. I was a double major in English and philosophy and a minor in economics, and I was also like, you know, I was on a very, very fixed income at the time, so I had to find creative ways to make money. So I promoted a bunch of big nightclubs in New York and did big rap parties. With the first people bring Ludacris to New York, and just did a bunch of stuff and used my youth capital to get me some return, to pay me a little bit at the time. I went to work directly out of college. I went to work in the mailroom at William Morris, which was at the time a talent agency that no longer exists. I was there for about a month and a half before 2 planes flew into the World Trade Center and blew them up. And I realized at that moment that life is very short. And I didn't particularly enjoy doing what I was doing at the time. So I went and sort of, through my college life, I knew somebody at Columbia Records, which is a record label as part of the Sony system, and sort of begged for an internship. I got a job that paid me, I think, like $7 an hour, basically as a second assistant. And I just sponged, I listened and learned and went out and saw shows and found ways to use whatever youth capital and experience I'd had playing music and knowing musicians and knowing bands in New York City to parlay into making things, happen in that space. So, soft skills, personality skills, and knowing how to deal with people is paramount in this life, as far as I'm concerned. So, you can learn all the hard skills later, but the soft skills really are what make things work. So.
Yeah, so cool. And also, I suppose that thing of just knowing the next stepping stone. It's not about necessarily knowing where it all goes. You just get to the next one. If you like, you see what opportunities, and then you move to the next one, and that's the journey through life, right? We don't have a big overarching plan, because best laid plans of mice and men.
Right. And the one thing I would say as an offering, like, this might sound trite, but the one thing I would say as an offering that somebody said to me at one point that I've taken really to heart is I don't mind. I don't ever mind regretting doing something. I can live with regretting doing something. I can't live with not having done something.
Yeah, so good.
Like, I don't mind regretting. I shouldn't have done that. That was dumb. It was a mistake. But what keeps me up at night are the things where I'm like, I could have done that and I was too scared. Or I could have had that experience and I, for whatever complicated reason, shied away from it. And those are the things that I think, when the lights are going out for all of us, that you keep in your mind. And if there's one thing to offer, as this guy's banging on my wall here, if there's one thing...
He's going to come through the roof there.
Exactly. I was waiting for him to fall through here. If there's one thing to offer anybody listening to this, and again, however trite it sounds, on at the midpoint of my career, I would say, is like, if something scares you and you're worried you're not going to be able to accomplish it, try anyways. It doesn't matter what it is. That's the big regrets of the things not done, not the things done.
And is that the advice we always end with, sort of traveling back in time and giving yourself a bit of advice? If you could do that and you could, go back to 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old Alex and tell him one thing what would you be saying?
I jumped the shark here, but yes, that's exactly what I would say. Is don't shy away from doing anything. Try it all. You know, I was this guy's banging. I part of, and again, not ending it on a morose note, but part of.
He's honestly gonna come through.
Yeah,
he knows you're on a pod as well. He does.
Part of what happened at William Morris after I saw those planes hit and I was down there was I was like, man, I'm sitting here doing this, like this could all be over tomorrow, and it has nothing to do with any like horrible decision I make or don't make or chancing. Like things happen and there's nothing you can do about it. So if I live intentionally and make a point to do things that you think might make you happy. If you're in the middle of something that you don't think is making you happy or has the potential to make you happy, because listen, anything worth doing is hard. Anything worth doing is hard. Like, you know,
totally.
Very, you know, and so don't conflate things being difficult with things not being worth doing. Right.
100%.
So if you're in the middle of something that you don't feel like is going to pay dividends for your soul, stop doing it. But if you're in the middle of something that's hard, but you feel like there's a light at the end of it, then, you know, bear through. But the one thing you can't do is say, I can't do that. It's too hard. That's the thing that when you're laying on your deathbed in however many, hopefully a very long time, you look at it and say, man, I could have swung and I didn't.
Yeah.
So if there's a piece of advice to offer that I would have offered myself, it's leap.
Yeah.
Right.
That's great, man. So, and I think, you know, we see some of our students come and they've you know, some of them have said, you know, I never thought I could make a film, you know, but I actually came and I did make a film, and then that can lead and it can lead. And this has been beautiful. And thank you so much for taking the time to share. I think, you know, there'll be loads of people listening to this who go, I want that job. That sounds absolutely amazing. And thank you for sharing, giving us an insight. You know, I've learned tons. I always do on these things. So really, thanks so much for joining us and sharing. It's been absolutely amazing.
Thank you both so much for having me. And again, I apologize for the roofers, but it was a necessary.
They were pretty quiet.
It's
like they almost knew. There was, I would say, for good 80% of the middle, they were pretty shushed up.
Yeah, we just hope the roof is great, right? That's the key.
It better be.
I'm never gonna see it. I just know it's gonna be up there, and everything's gonna be fantastic.
Thanks so much,
Alex.
man. This has been a joy.
Thank you.
I honestly was so captivated. We didn't even get a chance to really pick about like sourcing music. I think there was so much to unpack from the whole composing thing, in terms of how music gets composed for film versus video games. I just found so fascinating. Just that process of designing music for something that isn't concrete, you know, music's lived on the you know, if you think of like a musical page, it's like, it's this note, then this note, then this note, but they're like, no, it's this note, this note, and this note until this thing happens. And then we're going to go into that. And it's just such a fascinating world and process, you know?
Oh, there was so much to unpick from that. I mean, I could have talked to Alex for hours and hours and hours, but also because, you know, I'm not, video games is not something that I know a lot about, and hearing someone who has such an in-depth knowledge, both of movies as well as how video games work, and understanding the bits that really interest him about how music in particular interrelates in those two separate spheres was absolutely, it was completely fascinating. And I agree. I wanted to talk about, you know, the mechanics of that thing where you're not composing for a particular moment, you're composing, and then you're having it all picked apart later by a team of people who are kind of, I mean, I was trying to think, what's the screenwriting equivalent of that? I mean, it's very difficult to do, where you sort of it's like writing a kind of, I suppose maybe is it a document that you do as a sort of Bible for a series maybe, and then other people kind of pick apart scenes and move them, but
sort of, but not really as well at the same time, you know. The VR thing as well, I hadn't even thought about until he started talking about it, the whole thing of like the rules change massively from when you're watching something / playing it versus when you are actually in that environment. You don't not want music in the same way as in a film, because when you're playing a game, especially if it's a story game, obviously multiplayer games, there's never really music, but if it's a story game, that's not technically true, but if it's a story game, then it plays like a movie where you are moving the main character, but it's essentially a movie that you are interacting with. Whereas the moment you are in that world, we don't, unless you've got headphones on, we don't walk around town and music follows us everywhere we go. We walk around town and we walk past somewhere where music is playing, and that's such a different experience that obviously is going to be translated into that world. As VR progresses, I just think that's super, super interesting.
Music as place, basically. I think.
Yeah. Musically placed. Rather than if a character arrives at a hilltop in a movie, there might be like I'm thinking of like Lord of the Rings, like a really big epic score because they're looking over a beautiful view. But if you arrived at a hilltop in real life, there's no beautiful score playing because
it depends. Do you not take an orchestra with you?
Well, exactly. So if you're making a VR game versus a normal game you're going to have that music. VR game, you're not going to have that music because, again, totally. Unless you brought an orchestra with you. So it's just such a different experience. Just hearing about how that process unfolds, I just found so interesting.
And I thought as well that that term youth capital. What are you going to spend your time doing? And Alex telling his story of actually the Twin Towers and that moment that made him kind of go, wow, hold on a second. And everyone's, I think, well, not everyone, lots of people in my experience have a moment that's like that, and that can take so many different forms. So you suddenly go, hold on, is this what I really want to do? And his passion for what he does, I've known Alex a long time, and he just loves what he does, and he loves to talk about it because it's super cool, but he really enjoys the process of putting these things together, and finding and commissioning new music and seeing a lot of gigs as well. I mean, we were just talking off air there about, a crazy story that I had about a gig that I went to with him in LA that was absolutely mad, but it was, he was saying for 5 gigs a week, he's always going, staying just for a few songs, looking at the audience, seeing who they are, feeling connected to that world. So I think what an amazing job, right?
Yeah. If you love music and you like going to gigs, then incredibly special and incredibly rewarding as well. And what a cool world to be a part of, being involved in the zeitgeist, being involved in the music scene, but then also being involved in the creation of these immersive worlds, and the world of video games,
and I suppose the idea of being part of a growth industry, that is important, because as we see AI break on us all, there are going to be many, many worlds where you're going to feel that you're maybe in a dying industry. Now, that's not going to say it's going to die overnight, but there's going to be a sort of tail off. Whereas actually, Alex felt that he was moving from, and he described feeling that about music in the era of streaming, right? And that sort of going, hold on a second, it doesn't feel like this is going in an upwards direction, and moving to something that he could feel was that informed his choices as a young person. Which absolutely. I think, it is really cool. So do we have a question, Dan?
Yes, we have a question. We have a question from Tim. Tim wants to know how to get into making video games. This is on making the game side, so not on the music side, but actually making video games. And I thought, who better to answer that question than James Walker?
I'm going to, Tim, so let me give you all of the knowledge that I have. I'll try and keep this short.
I'll be able to add to it for the record, for those listening.
I'll start now. And that's it. There you go. So that, Tim, is my advice.
That was brilliant. And if you didn't catch that, you should press that rewind button, the rewind 15 seconds.
It might take a while to sink in. And I have absolutely no idea. I don't know. Dan, do you have any idea? How do you start making video games? How do you... can you do the equivalent like a short? I mean, can you go out and do like an independent short video game?
You can do smaller video games, much more sort of focused games. The software that you can learn, as always, is just getting familiar with those tools and giving yourself a head start. So a lot of video games rely on a system called Unreal Engine. So the more you know how to use Unreal Engine, the better. There's loads of tutorials online for it, and that's a system
kind
that
of
lets
like
you program games.
WordPress for video games. Is that showing my age? Is that bad? Because WordPress is the thing that kind of many websites are built using that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You know what?
Shaky
not
ground.
a bad thing, because that's like the system which
that's what I'm trying to
powers
say.
most websites. Yeah, this is the system that powers most video games. It's the engine that tells the games what to do when. There are other engines, but Unreal Engine is, I believe, it's accessible, and it might be open source. But either way, I'm pretty confident.
And is
you can
that
get
the
it for
same
free.
engine that's powering, virtual studio background? So when you go into studio and it's got all the LED backgrounds, which we've discussed many times, and I think that is a friend of mine shot on those, and that's Unreal Engine. I think is exactly that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's grown from being this thing that was powered very small games back in the day. We're now on Unreal Engine 5, I believe, or there's certainly been demos from Unreal Engine 5 which just look mind-boggling. Like every single version of Unreal Engine, it just gets so much closer to reality.
Surely AI is going to have a huge impact there, isn't it? Like that's going to turbocharge that world.
Oh, for sure. It'll be interesting how that filters in, because I think the application isn't quite as obvious, other than sort of working out how the software can do things better. But I'm sure once people work out how AI is going to help their individual fields, it's going to accelerate things massively. And my other advice as well is to learn, if you want to make games from a construction standpoint of designing, then learning how to use 3D software to model and sculpt and texture things, and also how to animate. Maybe you want to be an animator, because even though motion capture is used, like actors actually perform things and then that data gets translated to the characters, you still have to manually tweak stuff. So knowing how people move and how things move and practicing the skills of animation is really important. So you can use like 3ds Max or Maya, or Blender actually is the better suggestion, because it's free. It's open source, and there's loads of plugins for that as well. But do that if you want to get into modeling. If you want to get into the actual mechanics of the game, you can download models. I think the website's called Turbo Squid. You can download models of things that are already made by other people, and they upload loads of them are free. Some of them you pay for, but you can use those as your starting points. You could download those and change them in the 3D
the heavy
program.
Lifting's been done.
Exactly, yeah, and then you can bring those into Unreal Engine and use those to those assets to power your game.
Well, there you go, Tim.
Again, YouTube tutorials.
Well, so Tim, you can choose obviously my advice or Dan's, there, whichever
whichever
you think is whichever you think fits you best, really.
Yeah. 100%. Well, thank you so much for joining us, guys. This has been a real solid one. And again, one of the extra things we didn't get to even ask about, behind him the whole time during the chat, it was just his BAFTA sitting on the side as well.
I know we didn't even get to ask Alex about his BAFTA. Oh no. Sorry, Alex.
Thank you so much for joining us, guys, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.